You know that very specific and honestly very frustrating silence that happens in a doctor's
Oh,
office?
yeah. I know exactly what you mean.
Right. It's that moment when you're sitting on that crinkly paper in just absolute undeniable physical agony, and the doctor walks in.
And they do that little look down at their clipboard,
Yes. They look at the clipboard, they offer this tight little smile, and they say, well, the pain is real, but your labs came back completely fine.
which is a statement doctors deliver thinking they're giving you this massive relief. Like, in their mind, they're saying, hey, good news. There's no tumor. There's no shattered bone.
Sure.
But for the person sitting on that exam table, it is often the exact opposite of reassuring. I mean, it feels like the floor just dropped out from under you. You're left completely adrift.
Because if the MRI is clean and, the blood work is perfect, but you still feel like you're being stabbed in the lower back with a hot poker every time you stand up, you're left completely in the dark.
Exactly. You start questioning your own sanity.
And that is exactly what we are getting into today on this deep dive. We are looking at a deeply misunderstood medical paradox. Living with chronic pain when you also have co-occurring depression.
Right.
And our mission today is to really validate that physical reality, Fredo, break down what is biologically happening in your nervous system, and then explore a very specific, accessible telehealth model in Georgia that is actually built to solve this.
Yeah, and to start, I think the foundational premise here from the sources we're looking at is that modern medicine often treats the human body like a car with completely separate parts.
Oh, totally. Like you have a pain problem, you go to the pain mechanic.
Right. And you have a mood problem, you go to the mood mechanic.
Yeah.
But pain and mood do not operate on separate tracks. I mean, they run on the exact same overlapping circuitry in your central nervous system.
I was actually trying to visualize this interconnectedness earlier. Imagine you have a house with a really old, tangled electrical system.
Okay, I like this.
So you're sitting in the living room, and every time you turn on the air conditioner, it accidentally dims the lights.
Yeah.
You can't just hire a guy to fix the lights and another guy to fix the AC without anyone ever going down to the basement to look at the shared electrical panel.
That's a great way to look at it. But I'd actually take that analogy one step further. It isn't just that they share a panel. They are literally running on the exact same copper wire.
Wow. Okay.
So when a patient comes in with both chronic pain and depressive symptoms, the standard medical instinct is what we call the fix-it-first fallacy. The doctor thinks, let's cure the back pain first. And once they feel better, their mood will naturally bounce back.
Which sounds logical on paper.
It does. But treating the pain while ignoring the depression almost always hits a brick wall. And that's because of how our brain mechanically processes physical sensation.
Right, and this comes down to something in the research called the descending pain pathway, which sounds highly technical, but it's actually this really elegant defense mechanism in the body.
It really is.
Yeah.
Think of your brain as a command center. It doesn't just passively sit there and receive pain signals traveling up from your knee or your back.
It pushes back.
Exactly. It actively sends chemical signals down the spinal cord to intercept and modulate that pain. It's like a bouncer at the door of a club, basically deciding how much of that pain signal is actually allowed to enter your conscious brain.
And what blew my mind in this deep dive is the specific chemicals the brain uses to act as that bouncer. I mean, it uses neurotransmitters like serotonin and norepinephrine to close the gate on those incoming pain signals.
Yes. Now consider what happens when someone is experiencing clinical depression. Those exact neurotransmitters, serotonin and norepinephrine, they're depleted.
So you literally have no bouncer at the door.
None at all. The descending pathway loses its ability to block the signals. So the gates fly open and the pain signals rush up to the brain completely uninhibited.
Okay, so the air conditioner is blasting, pulling all the power, and the lights are completely dead. Treating the depression in this scenario isn't just about making you feel, emotionally happier about your chronic pain.
No, not at all.
It is about physiologically restoring the nervous system's mechanical ability to block pain signals.
The physiological reality is that depression lowers the threshold at which pain registers. So a mild ache becomes a roaring fire, purely because of the neurochemistry of the spinal cord.
That is just wild. But to really grasp the weight of this, we have to look at how this shared circuitry plays out in a person's actual everyday life, because this doesn't just stay confined to the spinal cord.
Right, it spirals.
It spirals from a physical sensation into a complete behavioral and psychological trap. And based on the sources, it usually starts when the sun goes down. A person is in pain, so they can't get comfortable.
They toss, they turn.
Yeah, they wake up every time they shift positions. So the pain keeps their brain too hyper-aroused to achieve deep REM sleep.
And that lack of REM sleep sets off a terrifying biological shift the very next morning. When you don't cycle through deep sleep, your body misses its crucial cellular repair window.
Which is when everything is supposed to heal.
Exactly. So your immune system gets confused and triggers a systemic inflammatory response. That inflammation literally, physically, hypersensitizes your nerve endings.
Oh, wow.
So the exact same physical stimulus, let's say walking up the stairs, that might have been a 4 out of 10 on the pain scale yesterday, is now an 8 out of 10 today, purely because you missed a night of sleep.
And naturally, because everything hurts so much more intensely the next day, human instinct kicks in, right? You protect yourself.
Of course.
You shrink your physical activity to avoid triggering a massive pain flare. Like if your knee feels like it's on fire, you are going to cancel your lunch plans. You aren't going to go to the grocery store. You are just going to sit on the couch.
Which is completely logical in the short term. But it's devastating in the long term, because when you shrink your physical activity, you are directly cutting off the very things that naturally supply your brain with dopamine and lift your mood.
Right.
It's not just about losing the physical benefits of exercise. It is the insidious loss of your identity.
Yeah.
You stop gardening.
Yeah.
You skip your grandchild's soccer game. You decline the dinner invitation. The sources of joy are systematically stripped away from your calendar.
Leaving you incredibly isolated. And when you are isolated, sitting alone in a quiet room with no external stimulation, the brain has absolutely nothing else to focus on.
Nothing at all.
There is no conversation or activity competing for your brain's bandwidth. So the pain has the entire stage. It's blasting through a megaphone.
And the trap just snaps shut. The isolation worsens the depression further depletes the serotonin, the depleted serotonin leaves those spinal gates wide open, the pain gets worse, sleep gets worse, and the cycle accelerates. It becomes a self-sustaining storm.
I have to pause here and push back on something because I can feel the tension from anyone listening who has actually lived with this.
Okay, let's hear it.
When we talk about mood and isolation and depression turning up the volume on physical pain, there is a very real fear that doctors use this exact explanation to quietly suggest the pain is just all in your head.
Oh, yeah.
It feels like a really polite way of saying, you're just sad and you're making a big deal out of a minor ache.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because we need to completely obliterate that misconception right now. Saying that your nervous system is interconnected does not mean the pain is imaginary.
Okay.
The structural issue, the inflamed joint, the damaged nerve, the muscular tear, that is 100% real. The sensory signal traveling up your leg is real. But your emotional state dictates the volume of the amplifier that signal passes through before you feel it.
So the signal is real, but the volume knob is broken.
Yes, exactly. And a broken volume knob doesn't mean the music isn't playing. Acknowledging that the volume dial is neurologically connected to your mood is not a dismissal of your physical suffering.
It's just a biological fact.
It is a biological fact, and it is actually the key to reclaiming your life. Because if you can't magically fix the nerve damage right now, you can still turn down the volume knob.
So if someone is listening and wondering, is this me? Have I crossed the line from just having a bad back into being caught in this neurological trap? We need to look at how this actually presents clinically. There are distinct red flags, right?
Absolutely. There are glaring red flags that signal a person's nervous system is caught in this loop. And one of the most telling indicators revolves around that sleep timeline we just discussed.
Okay, how so?
If someone has sleep disruption that either started before the pain became severe or it outlasts the pain complaint, that is a massive red flag. If the physical injury is healing, like if the knee feels a bit better, but the insomnia is still raging unchecked, that tells us the nervous system is stuck in a hyper-aroused state. The brain's threat detection system is literally stuck in the on position.
Wow. And there's also this fascinating, though honestly tragic, discrepancy that shows up in the doctor's office. You often see a massive gap between the physical medical findings and the person's functional decline.
Oh, constantly.
Like you have a patient whose MRI shows a very mild age-appropriate disc bulge. Structurally, they should be able to walk around and live a relatively normal life, but behaviorally, they are essentially bedbound, refusing to leave the house for months.
And standard medicine often looks at that gap and just throws its hand up. They think the patient is faking it or exaggerating. But that gap between the physical MRI and the functional reality is almost always filled by depression, anxiety, and an intense fear of triggering pain. Their world has shrunk down to the size of their bed because their nervous system is misinterpreting every movement as a catastrophic threat.
Which leads to what I think is the most heartbreaking red flag of all in the source material, which is treatment fatigue.
Oh, it's exhausting.
Think about the physical and emotional toll of being a chronic pain patient. You are literally carrying this heavy binder of medical records from the orthopedist to the neurologist to the rheumatologist. You endure the waiting rooms, the copays, the false hope of a new specialist.
Just desperately searching for one doctor to give you a unifying answer.
Exactly. But because they are all looking at isolated parts of the machine, you just get fragmented, unhelpful dismissals like, your nerves are fine, go see ortho, or your joints are fine, go see neuro.
It is incredibly traumatizing to be repeatedly told you are physically fine when you are living in agony, and that relentless exhaustion leads directly into a profound state of anhedonia.
Anhedonia being the inability to feel pleasure.
Right. It's the clinical inability to feel pleasure in things you normally enjoy. You feel completely flat, completely hollowed out. But the critical red flag here is that the patient blames the anhedonia entirely on their physical pain. They genuinely believe, I'm only miserable because my shoulder hurts. If my shoulder was fixed, I would be perfectly happy.
They don't realize the depression has taken root as its own distinct beast. It is no longer just a symptom of the pain, it is an active driver of it.
Exactly. When you see these red flags, the out-of-proportion functional decline, the treatment fatigue, the deep anhedonia, it is a glaring siren that standard medical care alone has failed. Chasing another MRI or another injection isn't going to fix the shared electrical panel. Cytological intervention must be brought in alongside medical care.
Which brings us to the crucial question, how do you actually treat this? If we know the system is intertwined, what are the therapies that physically and emotionally break this cycle? And the strongest evidence in our deep dive points to two specific approaches. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, which is specifically adapted for chronic pain, and acceptance and commitment therapy, known as ACT.
And we have to be very clear about how these therapies function, because the historical baggage of psychology in chronic pain is, frankly, terrible.
It's so bad.
For decades, patients were essentially told to sit on a couch while a therapist tried to convince them the pain was an illusion. That is gaslighting, and that is not what modern CBT or ACT does.
Right. They don't try to talk you out of your pain. They target the mechanics of that vicious loop. For example, a huge part of this therapy is something called activity pacing.
Yes, which is huge.
I find this fascinating because it directly attacks the boom-bust cycle that chronic pain sufferers know so well. You have 3 days where the pain is so bad you do absolutely nothing. Then on day 4, you wake up feeling okay.
So you try to make up for lost time.
Exactly. You clean the entire garage, you run all your errands, you push yourself to the absolute limit. And by doing that, you trigger a massive pain flare that puts you right back in bed for another 3 days.
It's the pendulum swinging wildly from complete avoidance to extreme overexertion. What CBT does is train your brain and your body to pace your energy. It teaches you to stop while you still have gas in the tank, intentionally smoothing out that boom-bust roller coaster so your nervous system can finally establish a baseline of safety rather than constant crisis.
It also focuses heavily on values-based functional re-engagement, which, sounds like a very dense academic term, but the application is incredibly beautiful.
It really is.
It is about identifying what you actually care about at your core, what your values are, and finding creative ways to re-engage with them alongside the pain. If your core value is being an involved grandparent, the therapy doesn't say, let's make it so your back never hurts at the soccer game.
Right, because they can't promise that.
Exactly. It says, how do we get you to that soccer game? Maybe we bring a highly modified chair, a portable heating pad, and we agree in advance that you will only stay for 30 minutes. You expand your life around the pain rather than shrinking your life to avoid it.
It is a fundamental shift in perspective.
Yeah.
But finding a clinician who actually understands this complex overlap of pain, sleep, and mood is notoriously difficult. And even if you find one, the logistics of getting to them can be a nightmare for someone in chronic pain.
That is the ultimate catch-22, isn't it? The days you need your therapist the most are the exact days your pain flare makes it physically impossible to get dressed, walk to the car, and drive 45 minutes to a clinic.
Yeah, you just can't do it.
You end up canceling the appointment that was supposed to help you manage the pain flare. But while looking into how people are actually solving this logistical nightmare, I found a practice in Georgia that has completely bypassed these barriers. It's called Coping and Healing Counseling, or CHC.
What is particularly striking about the CHC model is the infrastructure they've built to handle exactly this kind of complexity. They operate a practice serving all 159 counties in Georgia.
Which is massive.
It is. And they utilize a team of over 15 licensed therapists. This includes licensed clinical social workers, professional counselors, and marriage and family therapists. They have the clinical depth to handle the overlapping issues, the trauma, the deep depression, the anxiety, the stress that really exacerbates the physical pain.
And the absolute game changer here is that CHC operates as a 100% telehealth IPA-compliant practice. They have completely removed the physical barrier to entry. On that terrible Tuesday when your back locks up and you can barely get out of bed, you don't have to cancel.
Right. You can log into your session from your couch with your heating pad and still do the vital work of calming your nervous system.
Removing the commute and the waiting room chairs is essential, but equally critical is how they have dismantled the financial barrier to entry. Chronic pain often destroys a person's earning potential, making expensive out-of-network therapy just impossible.
So completely.
But CHC is incredibly accessible. If a patient is on Medicaid in Georgia, they offer a $0 copay. It costs them nothing to get expert help.
And even for those with commercial insurance, I mean, if you have Aetna, Cigna, Blue Cross Blue Shield, United Healthcare, or Humana, they're in-network. The sessions generally run between $10 to $40 a session.
That is so manageable.
It really is. When you combine the physical convenience of telehealth with those kinds of accessible copays, you create the exact environmental conditions necessary for a person to consistently show up. And consistency is how you retrain the nervous system.
It is about restoring agency to the patient. Chronic pain strips away your choices. It dictates where you go, what you do, and who you see. Engaging in targeted psychological care is a profound way of taking the wheel back. You are making a conscious decision saying, I may not have the power to instantly heal my nerve endings today, but I absolutely have the power to control how much territory I allow this pain to claim in my mind and in my life.
So if you're listening to this in Georgia and you recognize yourself or your spouse or your parent in this cycle, this is a tangible off-ramp. You can reach out to Coping and Healing Counseling directly. Their number is 404-832-0102.
And you can also explore their team at cheattherapy.com or just send an email to support@cheattherapy.com. It is a real, accessible step toward repairing that shared electrical panel in your nervous system.
Because that is the ultimate takeaway here. We have to stop viewing the mind and the body as hostile roommates living in separate apartments.
Right.
They're intimately biologically bound.
The pain you are feeling is real. It is not a character flaw, and it is not in your head.
Yeah.
But your nervous system is a brilliantly complex, highly responsive web. You do not have to wait for the elusive, perfect physical cure.
No, you don't.
You don't have to wait for the MRI to be pristine before you start reclaiming your mood, your hobbies, and your life. By targeting the psychological side of the equation, you can literally turn down the volume dial on your physical suffering today.
And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a broader question to consider. We've spent this entire time unpacking the undeniable biological reality that our central nervous system absolutely refuses to separate physical pain and emotional mood.
Right. They run on the same wire.
They use the same neurotransmitters, the same neural pathways, the same chemical gates. So why is modern medicine still structured with entirely different buildings, entirely different specialists, and completely disconnected vocabularies for the mind and the body?
It's a huge disconnect.
It really is. Perhaps the agonizing, isolating struggle of living with chronic pain isn't just a failing of your physical body. Perhaps it is a reflection of a deeply fragmented healthcare system that has simply forgotten how to treat the whole human being.
We'll leave you to think on that.